it's time. The Al Horford deep dive.
Oh, yes.
We've been excited about a few. I'm not sure we'll ever be as excited as we were about this Sam Hauser deep dive, but Al Horford coming into his age 38 season, touched on it at the top, wrote about Al Horford, the ageless wonder. And I think this, like, you know, the top of the story, I was like, everybody wanted the Celtics to lose. Mm-hmm. Everybody wanted the Mavs to upset the Celtics. But when the Celtics did win, it did feel like that was the one thing that people that did hate the Celtics could at least be like, hold on to. Like, it's hard to hate Al Horford. He's just been in the NBA for so long. He's just been like a consummate pro the entire time.
Sure.
But I said a near unanimous happiness for Al Horford because Sixers fans, I think, were, you know, more upset than anybody in the world to see Al Horford lift Larry O'Brien after what he did to them. But I think this video right here is important to show, but just because of how we feel about Al Horford and how Al Horford also feels about Boston.
Oh, my man is champ. That's it.
Nobody deserved it more than Al. Al's an unbelievable teammate, unbelievable person.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, champ. Nobody knows more than you, baby. Yeah, OG. Yes, sir.
You can win championships in many places, but there's nothing like winning in Boston. And nothing like winning as a Celtic.
I mean, that's sploosh material.
Yes.
That's sploosh. That's Al Horford juice has been spilled all over Ben's house now.
T-shirts available on the merch store below.
But yeah, so off the top, to contextualize Al in his age. So there are 6 players in NBA history that have made the NBA finals at age 37 or older while playing at least 30 minutes. So that's like players that are actually playing real roles on teams, 30 minutes a game. Like that's, I mean, Al Horford saved us again. We talked about Kristaps not being there, but he played 30 minutes a night in the playoffs. And the only other players to do that, Tim Duncan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar twice, Jason Kidd, Karl Malone, and Al Horford. Wow. If I narrow that down to who won the title, I can kick Karl Malone out of there, which is nice to do because any chance to kick Karl Malone out, you should take it. And while I was kind of researching how good Al Horford was, you know, outside of being 38 years old, Alex Hoops, I posted it on Twitter, but he did like a stretch and protect. The big men in the NBA that can stretch the floor and protect the rim because Pelicans fans are like, why have we not got one of those players? Because they don't really exist. So of players that have shot at least 3.5 threes per game and have a block percentage of 3% or more, there are 9 players. Joel Embiid, Victor Wembanyama, Jaren Jackson Jr., Kristaps Porzingis, Chet Holmgren, Brook Lopez, Naz Reid, Miles Turner, and Al Horford. That's the entire list of those players. And the Celtics have 2 of them, which is insane to begin with. The insane versatility defensively that gives you and being able to stretch the floor, obviously. But then I went one step further and I was like, can I have a look at, of the stretch and protect the rim guys, which of these guys are the best at defending in isolation as well? And so you look at, I've got the stats here as well. So Horford gave up 0.91 points per possession defending in isolation last season. And if you're watching on YouTube, I've got the list of guys here. KP was actually the most efficient there, giving up only 0.812. But if you look at the possessions defended, Al Horford has like double the possessions defended most of these guys. And the only one that's even close is Miles Turner at 123 compared to Horford's 156 isolations defended. And Miles Turner's giving up 1.057. Like this is just in a vacuum, one of the best big men in the NBA.
Yeah.
Like whichever way you slice it.
This tracks with the synergy stuff as well. Defensively, he's 65th percentile league-wide. So factoring in all positions, including all the guards and wings who would be much better defensively in this capacity. 65th percentile league-wide as a pick-and-roll ball handler defender, as in he switches on to the ball handler, to the Trae Youngs, to the Donovan Mitchells of the world, and holds up 0.86 points per possession as a 38-year-old center in the league, defending in isolation, or in this case, defending the pick-and-roll ball handler. That is fucking crazy.
Yeah. So real quick on his rim protection, and I think this is Al's superpower, is that he can kind of turn it on and off now that he's old, which is why he's so good in the playoffs. So within 6 feet, players actually shot better than their average against Al during the regular season. In the playoffs, their field goal percentage dropped by 11.2% when defended by Al within 6 feet of the basket. That is 5th out of players who defended at least 75 attempts around the rim in the playoffs. So he basically went from like old man, like I'll just kind of hold my hands up and I'm not really going to affect shots around the rim during the regular season, to an elite rim protector. So it's still in there. And that's why he is so impactful, even in the playoffs, despite, his age. And then the fact that you can just trust him to do a good job on Luka Doncic on a switch is like, you can't really overstate how valuable that is for a defense. And especially when that defense also includes 4 of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. It just creates like, you're just like the bully, man. It's like you don't let anyone crack the shell and you never get into rotation, and then offenses just plummet because there's nothing you can do. Your best option is like a step back 3. And maybe you go Donovan Mitchell on those for one game, but you're not going to win a series like that. And Al is like the key to us being able to play like that.
And it's crazy. Like, this is how good he is now. And there was Z Gamer on Twitter was like, he has slowed down, and he has slowed down. Like that is true. And so you look at the numbers, like so the 2022 playoffs when the Celtics had that historic defense, he was giving up 0.691 points per isolation.
Which is nuts.
So that's as good as it gets, right? And in this playoffs, he was at 0.822. Yes. And so like there's a drop there. But so Al Horford has slid and is slower relative to Al Horford 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. But relative to the rest of the big men in the NBA, he is still as good as it gets. Like if you want to go switch bigs in the NBA, it's like Bam and Anthony Davis are like some of like the only guys that are like ahead of him. Even he was ahead of Wembanyama last year. So he was just so good. And then we try and project forward here, right? So it's like, okay, how much more can we freaking ask of Al Horford, man? Like he's just been saving us. He's been so good. Like it's so good that we got the title for so many reasons, but like Al Horford was so good in the playoffs in the 2022 run. Like he shot like 40+%. I think he shot like over 60% from 3 in the finals. Like he was there, and people remember like Steph Curry cooking the drop coverage, but that was not the problem. That was not the reason they lost that finals. It's because they couldn't score. The defense was fine. And Horford was fantastic in that finals. And so it kind of felt like the Jays and the team around him kind of let Horford down, because that's who we know needed to get a ring because his time is limited. Is the time limited? Because like he said at media day, like retiring was never a consideration. I didn't think it was a consideration.
He looked great.
He looked incredible, as we've just outlined. He's been one of the best big men in the NBA, regardless of age. And so Tim Duncan has come up a lot on this podcast lately. And again, with Al Horford, which is credit to Tim Duncan, credit to Al Horford. But looking at Tim Duncan, so as you said earlier, Spoonie, he won the title when he was in his age 37 season as well. He played 2 more seasons after that. In his age 38 season, he played 77 regular season games while playing like 28 minutes a night. That year, the Spurs won 55 games and had the 3rd best net rating in the league. And in Duncan's age 39 season, he played 61 games at 25 minutes a night. He was 6th on the team in minutes, which is kind of exactly where they have Horford right now. Mm-hmm. The Spurs won 67 games and had the league's best net rating, ahead of the 73 win Warriors. So like, wow. And you think about the type of player that Tim Duncan was. Like he was never a guy that relied on explosive athleticism, to be dominant. He relied on just IQ, instincts, and skill. And then something that Tim Duncan didn't have going for him that Al Horford does is the 3-point shooting, which we haven't even talked about. Like, go ahead.
Well, I think Timmy would have nailed the 3-point shot if it was sort of demanded of him in that era of basketball. And that, continuing with the similarities between Tim Duncan and Al Horford, it's as they age and they lose a step relative to their 5 to 10 year ago self, their improvement comes with its relation to the rest of the team. So Al Horford's lost a step relative to himself 5 years ago, relative to the ascension of the Jays and Derek White and Drew Holiday. It matters less. It kind of fits together like a beautiful puzzle piece. He loses a step just as we actually require less of him. And I think that's really important to consider with a player like Al Horford as he ages. And the things that he can continue to give our offense and defense is spacing, 3-point shooting. We talked about his rim protection as well. He gives just enough in those areas of importance for a person at that position that the fact that he moves slightly less quickly laterally, it doesn't actually matter. It's almost a moot point.
Yeah, well, and he's such a good passer too. He like reads the game really well. He's always moving. He's always setting screens. He's always like when he's weak side, he will like just get it upon himself to like set a pin down for Jaylen Brown. That's not in the playbook. That's just Al Horford knowing how to play offense. Like even on his post ups, we generated threes on 30% of Al's post ups. Tatum was 17% and KP was 15%. Part of KP's is because he always fucking scored, but like yes. Al is generating good threes out of his own post ups. And in the playoffs, we had a 65% assist percentage with him on the court, in a 53% with him off the court. So like he is just such a ball mover, such a smart player. He almost like has evolved into like where Derek White was, like because White has become so good. I don't want to use that comparison really, but like what we thought we were getting with Derek White, like maybe make some open threes and like move the ball and play really smart. Al is like the big man version of that at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just, I'm so glad you brought up the passing. Like, he's perfect. This fucking guy is so good at basketball, dude, and has been doing it for so long for this team, man. Like, I mean, the 2007 draft, it was Odin, Durant, and then Al Horford. Mm-hmm. And it's just like he's now going to, I think, going to end up easily making the Hall of Fame with the title. He's going to have another deep playoff run this year. And then the 3-point shooting. So even taking into consideration, he had that down 3-point shooting year last year in the playoffs, not in the regular season. He was 44% in the regular season last year. So last 2 seasons, combining both playoffs and regular season, he's shooting 40.9% from 3, the 2 best year stretch of his entire career. So like while the other stuff has started to slip, his 3-point shooting has gone to a level that it was not previously at. Not just the accuracy, but the willingness, which is almost more important. It's the willingness to fire off, which we saw twice in the playoffs, 10 plus threes, 7 for 12, 6 for 13. I'm maybe getting those numbers reversed, but multiple games where he goes like nuclear from the 3-point line on 10 plus attempts. Mm-hmm. It's just not something that he was like even willing to do before he came back to Boston after becoming an insurgent at the Philadelphia 76ers organization. It's just like this guy is going to be able to play for as long as he wants, really. Mm-hmm. Like the gradual decline, like if he's giving up, he can't perfectly extrapolate the numbers, but if it's 0.69 and now it's 8.2 or 0.82, 2 years later, is it just going to be like 0.99 in 2 years from now while he's still an elite shooter and doing all these other things? Like that still makes him again one of the best big men in the league 2 years from now. So it's just going to be, does he want to? I think. And it's like right now, clearly he wants to be there. Like he's so excited. He's like extra motivated because of the shit that the Jays have been giving over the summer. It's like, do we get Al Horford on a fucking veterans minimum the following year? And that's literally going to be the best contract in the NBA by none. Yeah,
it's already pretty good at 10 mil per. Like given what he gives to this team, we've just talked all about it. Like despite his age, I guess that's maybe a good question is like, he's going to be the starting center for the Celtics for the foreseeable short-term future. Where does Al Horford rank among starting centers in the league? I can throw a few names at you if you like. Like obviously, like I'm scrolling through a list here at Hoops Hype. It's actually ranking the best starting centers of the league. And I'm scrolling a little bit because it's like, obviously Jokic and Anthony Davis and Wemby and things like that. But what about
Sabonis? I just saw Al Horford's better than Sabonis.
Yeah, Sabonis.
Sorry.
Rudy Gobert.
Sorry.
Alperen Şengün.
I'm sorry. And Sabonis can't play defense in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. You're telling me you're trying to win an NBA championship and you don't have a better chance to do it with Al Horford as your starting center than Sabonis? It's not even a fucking question.
Miles Turner?
I think that's the question is like, are we evaluating who I'd rather have in the playoffs or who like is, okay. So then, he's definitely better than Sabonis. I've been a long time Sabonis hater. Miles Turner's a tough one because he's one of those guys that like does what Al does kind of, but he doesn't have the isolation defending. He can't switch. And there's just something about his offensive game. I feel like he doesn't move the ball. His three takes for fucking ever to shoot. So it's like not super punishing against the defense. Like you can kind of take it away. And then it's like, what's next? Miles Turner's putting it on the floor. All right, man. Like we can live with that. So I think I'm taking Al over Miles Turner.
Easily.
Yeah,
Easily.
I think modestly, you'd say he ranks like 15th, like middle of the pack, modestly, like, among starting centers in the NBA.
That sounds I hate Al Horford to me.
Yeah, like, again, because like I've just this article. I got to discredit Hoops Hype here. They've got like people above Al Horford. They've got Mark Williams. They've got Bobby Portis,
Mark
Jonas Valanciunas, Yusuf Nurkic.
Oh my god,
Daniel Gafford. It's crazy. I mean, they may just not be considering him as a starting center, but suffice to say, such a valuable asset at $10 million per, coming off the bench, ready and willing to step into that starting spot. Very playoff compatible. Shot almost 43% from three last year. And Spoonie, you talked about the post ups. We don't ask this of him very often anymore, but he has like dad strength in the post. And a recent example is he did this to Derek Lively in the playoffs, where he only got to the free throw line. This clip's coming up in a second, where like he just completely bodied him. The youthful exuberance of Derek Lively clearly became too annoying for Al Horford, and he was just like, fuck you, little man. I'm just going to back you down and get to the line, which is exactly what he did. And we're seeing a few examples of this now. If you're watching live on YouTube, he can put his back to the basket and back guys down and get easy looks. And then Spoonie, you talked about the passing out of those positions as well. He's just so versatile. Here's this Derek Lively play I was talking about, just bited him. Big dad strength. But maybe the more interesting conversation is like, what are his weaknesses? Because similar to the Hauser deep dive, and really quite a lot of the deep dives we've done so far, we really go all in on the strengths because, you know, Brad Stevens has constructed an awesome team that have so many strengths relative to their roles. What are the weaknesses about Al Horford that we need to be concerned about?
He's 37. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
that's what I was going to say, dude.
I think he doesn't really put the ball on the floor anymore. He has like one of the lowest drive rates of like any player in the NBA. And part of why, well, rather, he also never gets to the line and anymore. Like at one point he had shot like 10 free throws in like 30 games or something like that. So, but we don't really need him to do that. So it's like the way Joe has him play magnifies his strengths and basically eliminates his weaknesses mattering. But those are really the only two things. It's like, because even when he does decide to drive, it's pretty effective. And like, he's a really good passer out of it. So it's not even that it's like a weakness. He just doesn't do it that much anymore because he doesn't need to. So I don't fucking know.
First possession of the finals was a drive from the corner of the dunk. Like he's got it in the bag.
Yeah. Like if the context is Al Horford has to play the Domantas Sabonis role in Sacramento, then they might not make it as far, like might not win as many games in their regular season. But then I say that though, like they've had so many defensive issues for years that he would help clean so much of that up, and they're still going to have a good offense because he helps you stretch the floor in a way that Sabonis doesn't. It maybe is like if he's playing that role, then when you get to the playoffs, he's not able to play as well as he did in the most recent playoffs because he only played 26 minutes a night last season. So
that was important.
And I think that's probably the answer to what you said, Spoonie. It's like he's 38 now, and we can't ask him to play 30 minutes a night for 65 plus games in the regular season and then expect him to play 30 plus minutes a night as the starting center on a championship team. That's his weakness, is that he's 38, but that's also like the most astounding thing about how good he is now.
Yeah. And like as a continuation of that, like I wouldn't call him a dynamic cutter or like off-ball mover or anything like that. So like, you know, we're forced to break down the weaknesses of Al Horford's game. So my hands are tied here, but I suppose limited in that sense as far as how he can stretch and keep a defense guessing about, you know, where he's going to be on the court. He's likely going to be waiting beyond the 3-point line, typically in the corner, or he's going to be posting up. And that's kind of it. So I don't know if you'd call that a weakness, more of a limitation.
Yeah, it's definitely a limitation, but it's also like, man, there's not a ton of big men who are like dynamic cutters, right? I mean, some guys are, but I'm like trying to I'm trying to like rack my brain for something he's bad defensively at. And even when he's like responsible for the corner shooter, he does a really good job at like controlled closeouts. And like, if the guy tries to put it on the floor, he corrals the ball handler. He's like, doesn't let you drive his closeout, and he contests threes. It's like, that is so important because Tatum's guarding the center. So Al needs to be able to do that well. And he does it really friggin' well. Like, I can't even really remember a time where he got like, there's a couple times where he got dusted off a closeout, but like that is so rare for a big man to have that ability on the defensive end. So weaknesses on the defensive end, I cannot think of one.
I remember there was one play where Kyrie kind of got him in a closeout situation and then dribble moved him and got to the rim, and Horford was like, "That's on me." But I just remember being like, "That just does not happen."
Right?
Yeah, that's on me as well. I got cooked by the world's best ball handler. Sorry, guys.
It's like
that was like the one time all season,
dude.
All
series, and it's like coming into the series. Dallas Mavericks fans are probably thinking like, "Oh, if they switch everything, we'll get Kyrie onto Horford. That'll be great." It's like, no, it's not great, and it's just like people have watched that all season, all playoffs, and it does feel like the takeaway sometimes is like, oh, he started to show some signs of decline, like people going at him, which we talked about. The one thing that people remember is like that one game that Donovan Mitchell went 7 for 10 from 3. And it's like, he would have done that against every big man in the league.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You can't guard the Donovan Mitchell step back 3 from 30 feet. If they go in, they go in. So we're back to talking about the strengths and not the weaknesses.
I know, it's tough.
But you know what, dude? This team just won 64 games, went 16-3 in the playoffs, and had one of the best net ratings of all time. So shocking. There's not a ton of weaknesses to talk about relative to the expectations and context of these guys' roles.